Margot. And it was really special connection back to the old Santa days, meeting the two boys at the back just then, who turns out they were friends with my brother at school when he was at Aquinas. So that was really special, guys, to make that connection. Yes, I'm an old girl, very old. I've worked out I'm a lot older than most of you. Thank you for coming. I thought there could be about 10 people who turn up because it was sort of sounded very feelings and soft, and I thought there might be a lot of men going, nah, not for me. So I really appreciate you coming to talk about a subject that actually isn't soft. It's actually very hard. And I'm hoping that in my very, very short little session today, I'm going to give you basically a year's education from Stanford, and that there's a little bit that might actually inspire you, both for looking after yourselves, but also in your relationships with your daughters, because I know a few of the gentlemen said that's the bit that you'd like to be able to understand a little bit more, is the compassion with your daughters. I'm going to do this as we go. Yep. I just want to ask if anyone can tell me, and Margot would know, and I know there's a couple who did the Zoom challenge last year, which was really nice to know, if anyone knows the actual definition of compassion, what compassion is.
Just kindness, I don't know what generous, friendly and considerate. Yeah,
so it's to be considerate and kind. I try in every challenge I do. So I've spoken to 1,377 students so far this term across a whole pile of schools, and I want every single one of them to walk away understanding what the actual definition of compassion is, because if you actually can break it down, it actually makes sense, and the science of it makes sense if you understand that. So the first part of compassion is it's a deliberate decision. The reason that's really important is compassion isn't that throw a coin in the hat as you walk past a homeless person. That's kind. But compassion is making a very deliberate decision that you're going to notice somebody else. So there's a mindfulness about it. Compassion is deeper, I guess, than being kind. Kindness is part of it, but it is much more encompassing because there is that deliberate nature of it. The second part is to lean into somebody else's suffering. So it's not enough to, again, throw the coin in the hat of the homeless person, as we all do. I remember talking to one of the top businesswomen in Perth. I was running a session with professional businesswomen, and I challenged her to go and do a kind act. And she wrote me a letter afterwards. She goes, I didn't realise when I go past a homeless person, I always try to put a coin in their box, but I never look at them in the eye. And she said, you've changed my life, because I now realise that to be truly compassionate, you actually need to be able to lean in. You need to be able to connect, because compassion is actually all about your common humanity, isn't it? It's about making a connection with another human being. And humans are social. We thrive on connection. That is who we are. It's actually really one of the most amazing things I learnt last year when I was studying from midnight till 7 a.m. With people from all over the world, was that Darwin never said survival of the fittest. He actually said those who will prosper are those who can work together. So it's the hunters and the gatherers, it's the people who could actually work together, not the people who beat each other over the head, are going to survive because they are able to lean into another person's suffering. So it's a really important section of compassion, is that understanding of your common humanity. The third part, I'm going to test someone afterwards. Hope you've got all the three parts. I think it's going to be you. Is that okay? Is it Morris?
Yes.
Is that okay? All right. The third part, which makes it very different from empathy. So who has watched Dog's Purpose with their daughters? Anybody? What happens when your daughters watch Dog's Purpose?
Without ruining it, they cry.
I actually do it as a test on my daughter's boyfriends, to see if they survive Dog's Purpose, to see what the level of empathy they have. They have to watch Dog's Purpose in our house. That is empathy. When you lean into somebody and actually understand their experience and you feel it yourself, you feel it in your own experience, that's empathy. Compassion is slightly different, because empathy is there any doctors here or clinical psychs? Because I'm really going to be dumbing down medicine right now, okay? Empathy sets off the sad part of the brain, because it's the part related to your sympathy and your feeling feeling with. Compassion's different because there's a commitment to action. Yeah? So when you're compassionate and you lean into somebody's suffering, you're not thinking about yourself in that moment, which often in empathy it is. You're going, oh yeah, I know what that feels like, yeah? Compassion is very much about appreciative listening and really listening to the other person's situation and trying to be there to help them make a change or to do some level of action. So compassion encompasses some of the most important things about being human, don't they? Shall we see if Dad of the Year here over here can remember the 3 parts? You didn't know you were going back to school and going back to school, did you?
I'll be honest with you, now that you put me on the spot, I forgot everything.
All right.
No.
All right. So it's a deliberate decision. And 2, lean in.
Leaning into
Someone suffering.
someone else suffering
Yeah, and the 3rd bit, you can read off.
is commitment to do something about it.
Beautiful. Yay! All right, I'm going to give you a present for that. Because I've worked out in schools, especially the naughty boys, they like presents. All right. So why do I try and teach this? There's probably 2 reasons. If any of you have been following Hugh Mackay's work on the Kindness Revolution, has anyone read his book? It's an amazing book, Australian book about why values are coming back into workplaces, why this stuff is really, really important right now, post-COVID, war in Ukraine. With all the changes in the world, there's been a very, very big focus on bringing values and care into workplaces. There's a lot of evidence now that the only way people are going to survive and our society is going to survive is if we actually create positive connections. I've just read this week, and it's only come out just this week, if anyone's really into reading. My husband isn't. I buy him a book a year and it's never been read. But has anyone seen this book getting reviewed? Okay. It's an 80-year study from Harvard that's still going, following families of all different classes, backgrounds, migrants, refugees, the old boys school networks, and they've been following them and testing the families for 80 years to try to work out what is the key to a happy, good life. What do you think that key would be, Greg?
Compassion.
Yeah, it basically is. It's what they've discovered is the one thing that has, and it doesn't matter what class, background, nationality, rich, poor, professional, it's positive human connections of care is the key to a good and happy and long life. So that's probably the one thing that I think is really important. And anyone who follows Google, they did an Aristotle project to work out what is the key to a good team, to create the perfect team. And they came out with exactly the same marker, testing all the Google teams over 2 years. So there is something in this. So again, it's not soft science. I thought I wanted to make sure you understand this stuff is actually real and it's hard research and it's proving to change lives. And I think it's really exciting. The other reason I have been getting into schools is because young people were telling me that their mental health improved being involved in my community work during the COVID period. Now I know that being involved in charity work makes you feel good. I've been doing it my whole career. I started at Santa. They got me involved in Amnesty when I was 15. That's where it all started. But for young people to say to me in that time when things felt chaotic, when they were at home because they couldn't go to school, that getting to go and deliver coffees to the nurses at Royal Perth or to the cancer patients who couldn't go in for treatment made them feel like they could be part of the solution and regain control over their lives. And so I thought it's really important if I can teach young people that that moment of connection and that moment of compassion can actually improve their mental health, then we're actually onto something. What I'm finding is phenomenal. And I would just want to give you a couple of stats just so you've got an idea. You'll go one forward, I think. Okay, we've talked about the good relationships. We'll move on with that. That's my daughter who talked here last week. Okay. 1 in 3 young people in Australia are experiencing mental distress. What I'm finding in schools, and as I said, I've spoken to about 1,300 students this term, is I would say it's probably 1 in 2. I would say if your daughter... Oh my God. Okay. We've got an earthquake going on over there. If your daughter is not experiencing some level of maybe anxiety, depression, eating disorders, struggles with communication, loneliness, one of their best friends would be. That's the reality we're actually dealing with as parents. And I'm not going to be the person who says I'm perfect and give you the answers, because I was here last week with my daughter telling her mental health journey. This is a real situation that our young people are going through. And what I'm finding when I go and teach these workshops is when you start engaging students in kindness and compassion, they feel better. I had a little year 5 at Santa the year before last say to me, I used to feel really, really anxious walking home from school. I would look down the whole time, and after I did the kindness challenge, I started to look up and I felt safe again. This is real results that are happening from something so simple that I can't believe. And that's why I went and started studying it. This is the result. 98% are telling me their mood improves from the beginning of the day to the end of the day when they do a workshop. So just starting to talk about things that are kind and starting to actually understand how their brain works lifted their mood universally. Their mood on average improved 25%, so from about 5.8 to 7.6 from the beginning of the day to the end. Some of the kids, not so much Santa, because the Santa Year 5s were a reasonably happy bunch, but some of the kids I've worked with have gone as low as 1 or 2 out of 10 when they're starting their day. So we're talking pretty serious low moods, yeah? So what happens when we are kind? I'm just trying to think. Okay, I'll just leave it on that one for the moment. Does anyone know what happens to your body when you're kind?
Probably flooded with endorphins. You have this sense your chemistry changes.
Yeah, it does. So look, I'll start off with firstly, obviously your social connections improve because immediately you're having a connection with another person. They did a study at, I think it was Yale, with 4,000 uni students. Half of them, they actually got to do acts of kindness for 4 weeks because it's been proven an act of kindness every day for 4 weeks actually changes your brain, changes your positive mindset. And they had half of the group not. The half that did became, one of the big markers was they became more popular. So for your kids, to actually get them engaged in things that are around compassion actually helps them to make those connections. And a lot of them are struggling with those connections. Obviously, this doesn't help. Yeah, the gaming, the social media has a lot to answer for with this. The physiological, so the neuroscience of it is, and I'm going to say it's way more extreme for the teenagers than us, than me, oldie. You're all young, yeah? A lot of incredible hormones get released when you're compassionate. In fact, they've done MRI scans and 7 parts of your brain light up when you're compassionate. 7 separate happy parts of your brain light up every time you do an act of kindness. Even thinking about doing an act of kindness now, I know someone was going to forego his vegetarian arancini so that the vegetarians could eat it. Even thinking about that is an act of kindness and starts to get those hormones going. So that's actually really important. So even if you sometimes don't feel courageous enough or able to take that risk to be kind to, say, someone in your workplace, even the act of thinking about it can actually improve your mindset. The hormones that get released, dopamine. Okay, boys know about dopamine. Come on, Greg, what's dopamine?
It's the reward hormone.
Yeah, I call it the bungee jumping hormone when I'm talking to kids. Yeah, it's that one when you jump off and you go, whoo, yeah? It's the hormone. A lot of the basketball boys like it. It's when you're standing on the line and you're about to do the free point and you get it without it hitting the the wall, yeah? It's that feeling. For teenagers, the release of dopamine is about 40 times as much as us when they're doing an act of compassion. So it's a really big deal. They get a really big rush, yeah? They also get serotonin. Does anyone know what serotonin is?
Chill hormone.
Yeah? It's a calm, yeah, it is. It's a feel-good, calm down, it's a mental health drug, hormone going through your body. So while you're getting that big high, your body's actually also calming down and looking after itself when you're compassionate. So serotonin is really important, and it's, the way I describe it to your children is if they're feeling really stressed, going and offer to make mum or dad a cup of tea and just sitting for 5 minutes, that act of kindness will give that moment of serotonin that actually immediately takes that stress out of your body. Or going and patting your dog. Yeah, that's why those things work. Yeah? Really simple things that can take the stress out. And the kids are feeling stressed, so we need to be doing these little things. Yeah? It's the connection and it's the hormones. The really big one I want you to know about is oxytocin. Does anyone know what oxytocin is?
Love.
Hmm?
The love hormone.
It's a love hormone. It's actually, I like to think it, and this is, I'll take this because we're all mums, the mums who are here. It's the mum's hormone. It's that bonding one when you've had a baby. It's that beautiful love hormone that makes you feel like you belong or connect. The cool thing about oxytocin, and kids don't know about this, but I'm going to guess a lot of dads might know about this, having a husband who's 63. When stress builds up in your body, you get cortisol in your blood. Do any of you know about that? Yep, you know what I'm talking about. So it's like having plaque from your teeth in the middle of your bloodstream. And it builds up and it gets harder and it builds up until it blocks your blood, and what happens? Yep. Oxytocin pushes more oxygen through your blood. So it improves and lowers your blood pressure. It cleans out the cortisol. It improves your heart health. They did some research with some elderly people in the Netherlands, and they found that on average those who did 2 acts of kindness a week, so volunteered twice a week, lived 7 to 8 years longer than those who didn't, because their heart health was better. Even more than those who go to the gym. Sorry, gym donkeys. Yeah? They last about 3 years longer. So actually doing stuff where you're actually looking after the stress in your body physically, yeah, changes everything. Shall we show how it works, Marco?
I think so.
We have somebody. Who did we choose? Johan. Where is Johan? All my children are over 6 foot, so it was nice to have a... Okay. So are we happy to have a little test of how this works? Would you be happy to do an act of kindness right now?
Yeah.
Okay. So normally, I know that there's a couple who have been on the Zoom challenge, so know what happens here. All right. I want you to choose someone in the group who you would like to give a gift to.
Okay.
And you're going to give it now. And I want you to find out how they feel. But I also want you to actually notice what happens with your body, so you can tell us. Does that sound okay?
Yeah,
I'm going to give you a
that's
gift. It's a little box of happiness, specially made for the men here. I have these 2 mums here in Perth who actually help sponsor the charity I work with and make these little boxes up for me. So people can actually go on the website, donate, and then they give me one in case there's someone who's escaping domestic violence, whatever. So I get these boxes for the other side of what work I do. So, do you know who you're going to choose?
No, I don't.
All right. Do you want to take 1 minute? Do you know a few people here?
Yeah, I do.
Oh,
but I
sure.
don't want to choose the ones I know.
Oh, good. Okay. Do you want everyone to put their hand up who was new tonight? Would that
Yeah,
be?
maybe
Put your hand up if you're new tonight. Let's get some. Okay. And put your hand down. Put your hand up if you're a Year 7 parent, so or a new parent this year. Okay. Put your hand up if you are a Year 12 parent, because that's a pretty stressful time. Yep. Has that helped you at all?
No.
Do you want to go down and whisper with Margot?
I
Do you
don't
want to
know,
know?
don't ask me.
No. I think we'll take a gamble.
Okay.
Okay.
Can we give him a hand? Yay!
Right, Greg, you had a lot to say tonight, so I think
Up you
I'd like
go.
to give you a gift.
Oh,
It's like you can do with a hand.
yeah. Nice. Okay, just so can we just see how Greg's changed in that moment? I can see it because you're facing me.
Oh,
They
yeah.
immediately. Yeah, so that's actually the oxygen going through your body
Yeah.
right now. Yeah?
Yeah.
How are you feeling?
Yeah, good. Just sort of nice, happy, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's amazing.
I
So
can
we
feel
all
the
know what they're
serotonin
receiving.
because it's chilled.
Yeah, it is.
No, not this.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh, you've
the
got
mood
your.
is chilled, but it's nice. And
Okay, and how do
nice
you
way
feel?
about him? So. I feel good.
Yeah. What happened?
Thanks, John. Oh, it's only a pleasure. You could share something.
Yeah.
And I think I'm a fairly compassionate person, so I like sharing and I like giving. So
Yeah.
it's good. Good for
Thank you. So that's what we do with the kids, but they have to normally choose a staff member at the school, and they have to actually lean into compassion and actually think about: is there a staff member they know who might be struggling or have been sick or might be invisible and not seen because they are working behind the scenes, and they think really carefully. So they go through that, making that deliberate decision. So you made a decision that you weren't going to choose one of your mates.
Yeah.
Yeah? In the exact same way. Does that make sense? So compassion is to step beyond yourself. Yeah? Which happened just now. And to lean in and to connect in that way with humanity. And in that moment, and I call it like a micro moment, it's tiny. It doesn't take long. Everything changes just by making that connection. The dopamine and the hormones you get from doing that last for at least an hour, just from that moment, yeah? I was doing with some of the parents who were on the Zoom from Santa last year were on farms, and they said they hadn't seen anyone for a week, wasn't it? A week, one of them. And they started to do some self-compassion of going and making a cup of tea and just looking out. And so doing exactly the same. So a deliberate decision to lean into their own suffering of feeling lonely, yeah? And have a cup of tea in the morning and look up at the sky. And they're still writing to me. Margot and I can't believe we're still getting contact from these parents who are saying their whole day changed from taking that moment and letting those hormones go through their body. Their mindset changed. And so obviously you boys are both, I'm going to guess most of you are because you chose to come tonight, but if you could imagine trying to do that with your teenagers, yeah? And the teenagers, they might get 9 happy things happen in a day, but they will focus on that one negative. Negative bias is a really big deal as teenagers. So if we can start seeing ways we could start our day role modelling that little moment of positive with them, we're going to help them change their mindset for the day. Does that make sense?
Can I be selfish?
Yeah.
Talk about mindset change. So when you did that, I thought, oh, geez, I mean, this is really nice, but now I want to do it.
So you can pass it on.
And I was wondering if anybody, like I had a pretty good week with my daughter, but if anybody had a tough week with their daughter and they could use this as a conversation starter with them when they get home. And,
Is there someone who has a
you got
daughter
the
who's
guts
not
to put
talking
up
to
your
them at the
hand.
moment? I know there's a few who've told me.
Then I'll...
Would anyone like to have it and be able to go home and talk to their daughter about compassion tonight? I think that is the most beautiful thing.
Don't take this away from me. Come on.
Boys at the back?
Yeah.
Yeah? The boys at the back were talking.
Where are they? Which boys?
The
Right at the back here.
The ones sneaking at the back seat bogans in the back of the bus.
They're the kindest boys.
Yeah, the kindest bogans. Okay. All right. Beautiful. Greg, thank you. All right. So we're finishing in a sec because I'm only allowed to talk for a very short amount of time. I would love to talk to you forever about the triggers and how to turn your kids' primitive reactions into positive responses and stuff. And so we might be able to get together again sometime. I know Margot and I are talking about doing another 4-week Zoom challenge next term where you can just come in your pyjamas. We were in our pyjamas and we just talked for an hour on a Wednesday night. for 4 weeks about this stuff. If this stuff is of interest to you, please come and just have those chats, because what we are seeing is it actually makes a difference, and it makes those conversations possible with your kids. And it might not just be your kids. Your wives might be struggling. You might have workmates who are struggling. You might be struggling. And I know some of the wives said last week that their husbands were struggling. So it's not just about your kids. This stuff is actually about looking after yourselves as well. Some of the things the kids wanted, I'll give you just a few tips. The Year 7 girls at Iona said, and I think this is really, I spent 2 full days on camp with them and then did a Zoom challenge with their parents. They asked for 2 things. They asked for their parents to teach them more feeling words, because they say bleh, happy, bad, sad, angry. Yeah? They don't know how to say desolate, distressed, frustrated, all the words that they are feeling. And they would love their dads to give them a words of the day challenge, that you guys could actually try to add those words to your vocabulary in a day, so that in those times that they are struggling to communicate with you, which is really hard when you're a teenager, if those feeling words are part of the vocab you have, it's actually going to help. So I thought that was a really good tip coming from kids your age, your kids' age, yeah? The other thing they asked, and Margot, you up for a challenge?
Oh, I don't know.
This was Iona girls, but I'm going to guess Santa girls would say the same, okay? They would love, in the younger years, to have dad jokes in the homerooms every day. Because compassion's also about fun, yeah? It's about making human connections and having fun. On our Zoom challenge, we did dance in the last week together, online. I just had a thought as I was driving here. I live up in Sorrento, so I had a decent drive down. Wouldn't it be nice if every Mozzie dad wrote a dad joke and gave them to Margot, and she made a book that could go to all the Year 7, even the Year 5, 6, 7 students, so they could tell a dad joke every day in form or homeroom? Who would be up for that? Yeah? A Mozzie dad joke book?
Yeah, we need some guidelines.
Okay, we will keep it GPG, okay? I'm not talking about the beer and compassion session, okay? Is that fair? How would you like to do that, Margot? Because I think that would be a really beautiful way that you could connect with your daughters and do a project that is actually a compassion project that will give them joy to start their day. Because we're talking about changing the mindset, yeah? A deliberate decision you guys have made for their day to start with a laugh. I think that would be great. I would love if you could role model doing something of self-compassion for yourself tomorrow. I'm not going to ask you to do a half-hour meditation or ballet class, okay? I'm an action person. I'm not very good at that stuff myself. But could you not pick up your phone and scroll as soon as you hop up or race out, but just look up at the sky? Teach your daughter to say good morning to herself as she looks in the mirror and admire herself. Especially as the students get older. Who's got the Year 11s and 12s? I've done a lot of works with the Year 11s and 12s this term. They are very unkind to themselves. Okay? They find it really, really hard to say something nice about themselves. So if you're role modelling saying good morning, you look beautiful, yeah, love your smile. So starting the day with them saying something positive about themselves, they can only do that if they see Dad doing that too. Yeah? The other one's really hard, and this is the last bit of advice I'm going to give you, because I'm not perfect, I promise you, is to show them you're not perfect. The Year 11s and 12s especially have been saying to me, one of the hardest things with trying to be kind to themselves is the pressure we put on ourselves, our parents put on ourselves, we feel from school, we feel from society to perform. Now, we as parents probably don't feel like we do that, yeah? But they're feeling it. So to show sometimes that you're vulnerable, that you're stuffed up, yeah? That you're not perfect. I mean, I had the biggest challenge ever last week, standing there with my daughter, who the day before had got out of a mental clinic to do a talk for the Santa parents. So I had to put everything aside, yeah? And just go, if we can show our vulnerability, they will be able to be vulnerable with us as well, yeah? My son moved to Sydney last year, and he works for a company who every week they make a report of all their successes, but they actually make a report of all their mistakes. And they celebrate their mistakes as something that they can learn from. And I think that's something that we could really learn as parents, to show our kids that we do make mistakes and that's okay. And this is how I dealt with it. So does everyone think that they could take those challenges on? So you're doing something kind for yourself. You're doing something kind for your kid by engaging in a positive way. Yeah? So that they feel that compassion and love. Yeah? And you let them know that it's cool to be imperfect. Yeah? That it's actually really cool. And that's where all the learning comes and all the growth comes. Now, beautiful Margot, my friend, and Ali, and I thought, would you like to finish tonight? We've got a card so that you could write a letter or a card to your daughter or daughters or wife, if you like, to somebody based on what you've thought about today. Something, it might be expressing gratitude for them, saying that you would love to go on a dad date with them, to go and do something, yeah? That you really admire something that they did, how they handled a failure or a tough time recently, just something. If you write that card for the next 5 minutes, we promise beers afterwards, but for those 5 minutes, just to be mindful and deliberate and think about the person you want to write the card to. If you address it, we're even going to send it to them so they can get an old school letter in the mail. Would you like that? So they can get it in their letterbox. And that you've made that deliberate act of compassion tonight for being part of my kindness challenge today. How's that sound? All right.